Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today on our very first episode of Living Well with Benedictine. My name is Dina Boheim, and I am the marketing director here at Benedictine. Now, if you're not familiar with Benedictine, you may be familiar with our communities. Benedictine has over 30 communities in 5 states, including Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, Missouri, and Illinois. Our tagline at Benedictine is living fully and living well. And our goal is to make sure that not only are our residents inside our walls, our communities, living fully and living well, but outside in the greater community as well. So that's why we wanted to start this webinar series to make sure that we were bringing our mission out into the world. We hope to make this a regular episode and that we will have several different topics that can help you in your everyday life. Now, it might be financial, we might have some tech tips, we might talk about downsizing. Of course, we'll probably have some good health information. We might even do an exercise or a class or even yoga. So today we are focusing on our inner well-being. And our friend, my very dear friend, Sister Lisa Maurer, is joining us on Living Fully and Living Well. Sister Lisa is the Director of Formation and Vocation for the St. Scholastica Monastery here in Duluth. And she is an expert on our inner well-being. And I had the pleasure of working with her for many years when she was with Benedictine as the Director of Mission Integration. And she's very familiar then with our organizations and with many of our residents and staff, and is well loved in our community. So just a note before we get started, we welcome your questions. I hope that you'll be asking us questions as we go through this today. There's a question and answer bar, either a little box right below, depending on what kind of device you're on, or it might be on the side too. Feel free to type your questions in there and we'll answer them at the end. So, Sister Lisa, thank you so much for being here. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me to be a part of Living Well. I do love Benedictine and the mission and all that you do for the beautiful people of God. So I'm just excited to be with you today to talk about living well. And thank you also for asking how I'm doing, because isn't that a question that we ask ourselves and ask one another all the time? And I think now in this day and age, what we're living in right now, when we ask someone how you're doing, I think we actually mean it, as compared to in the past. We used to just say, oh, hi, how you doing? And not wait for the answer. Now when somebody asks you how you're doing, I think we really mean it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, in this day and age, when with the pandemic and with the coronavirus and all that, we're really concerned about how people are doing. Like, are you healthy? Is your family healthy? Also, just how are you doing with this being in your house and, no sports out there, not being able to go to church? Like, how are you doing? And I think it's a great question to ask one another. And it's a great question to ask ourselves to find out, how are we doing?
So tell me, how are you doing?
Thank you. Right now, in this moment, I'm doing very well, because I think it's because I'm here with you that I have something to be about and something to be sharing in. Here at the monastery at St. Scholastica, at the monastery where I live, we are doing well. Thanks be to God. We're all healthy and safe and following all the protocols that we're supposed to be following. So I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How are you doing, might I ask you?
We are doing just fine. We're back in the office and happy to be here and happy to be supporting all of our wonderful communities out there where everybody is working so hard caring for our residents. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, outside of the standard things that we all know we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be washing our hands. We're supposed to keep social distance, smaller groups. But that's just part of what we need to do to make sure that we are well during this time. We need to look inside too. What are some of the things that that you're doing and that you can suggest to others how to take care of themselves?
Well, like you said, it is important that we do those physical things and those things that are being recommended to us to keep ourselves physically safe and to keep others around us safe. So all of those things, like you said, the hand washing, the distancing, the all of that. But along with that, make sure we're eating right, make sure we're getting our rest and make sure we're getting our exercise so that we are actually taking care of our physical selves, because as we look at taking care of our spiritual selves and our mental health and all of that, it's all connected, body, mind, and spirit. So we got to take care of our bodies and all of that. But as you said, it's so important also to think about our whole self, our inner self. And to me, that means being human, that we are taking care of our human self and all that that means. To me, when all of this started, and for some reason I mark back to St. Patrick's Day. I think here at the monastery, that's when things started changing, and I think the governor in Minnesota came on, and so in the beginning, there was a lot of fervor, at least for me, that, oh yeah, I'm going to do this because it means taking care of ourselves and we got to take care of others and this pandemic and we got to get together. So I had a lot of fervor about it, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And it turned into days, it turned into weeks, and now it's turned into months. And so now I'm kind of like, whoa, where's that fervor? Am I going to really stay and take care of myself? So I think as a human person, it's important for us to make sure we're taking care of our whole human self. As I said, be that body, mind, and spirit. And for me, that means that I really look at how I am doing. Excuse me.
Is that God calling?
I don't know. I think that was God. I'm sorry about that. But that idea of taking care of our body, mind, and spirit, about who we are as a whole person, and for me, that has to do with prayer. That has to do with taking time for quietness. That has to do with time for getting outside. All of those things are wrapped up in that.
Do you have other things that you would recommend that are maybe special to you or special to those that you love that are working for people?
Yeah. As I said, following the protocols and all of that, but really taking the time to recognize that I have to see what I am going through. What do I need for me to be okay today? Do I need to get outside? Do I need to make a phone call to a loved one? Do I need to take time to read a book? Do I need to clean out that closet? All of those things, are important for me to see that I'm taking care of myself, my whole self, and not just worrying about washing my hands.
I think in our former lives, as we kind of refer to it now, no matter what stage of life we're in, we were so busy. We have our routines, we have our daily um, work, whatever that might look like for an individual. But now things have slowed down, and you mentioned quiet, and things are quiet. And now I think when things are busy, it's easier to ignore
Mhm.
that what's going on inside. Um, Now we have more time and need to nurture it. It's more important than ever. What kind of advice do you have for nurturing that inner
Yeah.
well-being?
I would say for the first thing is to try to stay positive. It is so easy in all of this to get bogged down in what's going on. And when I say positive, I don't mean in some Pollyanna, fake, false way, but in a real way to stay positive. That, to me, that means being careful with how much TV and how much news and what I'm paying attention to, because what I feed my mind, what I feed my heart, what I feed my soul is what's going to occupy my thoughts. It's what's going to occupy my time. So staying positive um, is important. We have to stay informed, but also don't consume too much of that. In these last days, I know I struggled with that. I struggled with, I want to know what's going on, but I need to find a way to stay positive with what's going on. And I recognize that I want to keep my sense of joy. I want to keep my sense of hopefulness, even in the midst of what's going on. And I recognize I can only control so much. I can only control so much of what's going on around me. And I think that's one of the things that I actually grieve, is that I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you're just joining us, we're here with Sister Lisa Maurer, and I'm Dina Boheim, and you're watching Living Well, and we're talking about how to take care of our inner self during this time. And Lisa, one of the things that you mentioned was prayer and your spiritual beliefs, how is that helping you through this?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's all about being human. And as a person, as human beings, I believe that we were all created and made in the likeness and image of God, and that we are loved by God. And so for me to be centered, I need to do that. And again, I also mentioned the fact that in so much of this, there's so much that we don't know. There's so much that feels out of control. So where do I go back to center? For me, that means going to prayer. That means going to some quiet time, whether it's meditation or reading a spiritual book or reading the Bible, just having that time to be centered and recognize that God is still in control. That brings a lot of peace to me, and it helps to quiet those worries and those things that are going on in my own mind.
I've heard the expression, maybe you've heard it too, that let's see if I can get it right, that we're not all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. And obviously, that means that we're all in the same situation, we're all in the same global situation, but our experiences shape it differently. How do you think that we can get through this storm together when our experiences are so diverse?
It goes back to remembering that we're all human, and it goes back to remembering that we all want the same things. We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel loved. We all want to have connections with our family and friends, have enough food and shelter and all of that sort of thing. So to be united in that. Another thing that I think about with that idea of the same storm, different boats, or however, as you said, it goes, is to help recognize that what I'm going through, I need to accept what I'm going through, and I don't need to judge it against what other people are going through. I've been doing a lot of reading on this idea and listening to a lot of podcasts and things like this and reading books and articles. And something that really caught my eye was this idea that right now, thanks be to God, I do not know anyone who is sick with the virus or that is suffering in that way. I know people who know people, and I know business owners and that sort of thing. I know people are suffering. But I'm struggling too, but I feel weird saying, I really miss baseball. I love the Twins. And I'm going, I really miss baseball. And I'll say something like that. Well, I'm sad and I'm upset because I miss baseball. But I know there's people that are suffering from the virus, and I know businesses. And so I'm kind of like trying to judge who's suffering more, whose suffering is more worthwhile. And that's not a way to do it, because we are all in the same situation. So this person said a better way to think about it is to say, I'm really missing baseball, and I know other people are suffering in this way. So it's not so much of putting a judgment on what I'm feeling, but just recognizing that as human people, we are in this together. We're just experiencing it differently. We can pray for those who are suffering. We can maybe reach out and help in a way. But to take care of myself, I also have to give myself permission to deal with, go through, feel bad, be sad, be worried, be happy when I want to be happy, or be excited when things happen, but I have to allow myself to feel what I'm feeling as a human person and validate what is going on with me.
And I think you raise a really good point. And you can flip that too, because I think a lot about judgment and trying not to judge others for what they may choose to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, um, it's okay to say, I miss baseball and whatever the other person is experiencing. And I think we could flip that too, and not say, well, you miss baseball, but I've had this bad thing happen to me,
Mm-hmm.
so my situation's worse. So I think
Right.
that idea of letting go of judgment and letting people experience, because we're all grieving. We're
Right.
all grieving. At the very least, we've lost our sense, we're grieving our sense of normalcy. We have people, obviously, like you mentioned, who have lost loved ones or maybe have been sick, but we are grieving our experiences too. Kids are not able to experience graduation, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe people aren't able to move or start a new job or take a vacation. We're all grieving something.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit more about how to deal with this unique kind of grief?
Right. The first thing is to talk about it like we're doing right now today, because in my own experience, when I don't talk about things, my mind is still talking about it, and it's talking about it, it's echoing and it's getting loud. It reminds me of a little kid who's scared of the boogeyman, and he's scared of the boogeyman until he tells mom or dad, and they open up the closet door and they're like, look, it's not that bad. So sometimes I can talk about things in my head and they get so big and they get so bad and they can just consume me. I need to talk about it. And talking about this idea of grief and what we're feeling is very important, because we are experiencing grief. We are experiencing a collective grief, like you said, the grief of normalcy and all the things that we're used to doing, the important moments that we've been missing, whether it's birthdays or graduations or weddings or even a funeral or the birth of a baby or all of those things. We're grieving our idea of safety, our idea of control. And then we're also anticipating grief in that we don't know what's coming next. Is a virus going to come here? Is something going to happen to my family? What's going to happen with this? Is school even going to start next year? So we have those type of griefs that are going on. But
And are you going to be able to coach football?
that's part of what I'm thinking about. There's my football. Yeah, is school going to start up? Is there going to be football? Is there going to be a state fair? People are already worrying about those types of things. So not only are we grieving what's right now, but we're anticipating what we might be grieving. And with that grief and with that idea of looking at what it is, they say it comes in two different ways. Some of the things I'm grieving are personal to me, like they're right here in front of me, and the experts, people smarter than I am, call those micro. So we got some micro grief going on, we got some macro grief. Like I'm grieving the fact that I haven't seen my family since way before Thanksgiving. I'm grieving the fact that there's no baseball, and I'm grieving the fact that I can't go out to eat how I like, or that we have a different schedule here. I can't go to church like I want. So all of those things. But then we grieve on the macro level, on the big level. We're worried about the economy. We're worried about healthcare. We're worried about, our church is going to open. Can I travel? I'm worried about the people on the other side of the world. What's this doing to the poor people in India or to the people in Africa, and how our businesses, so we have grief on so many different levels. To me, the important thing about that is to do something with it, to talk about it, to somehow, I don't want to say make it seem normal, but at least make it not seem so big. And talking about it is one way to help bring that back so that I can at least deal with it. I can at least talk about it. I can at least somehow make sense of what's going on in my life.
I think, and you alluded to this a little bit, I think the fear of what is unknown is something that is looming over all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways that I recommend people that I love take care of themselves is to not watch. So we don't need to watch the news. Somebody equated it to a box score in a sporting event. Watching the number of infected and the number of the deaths keep rising. We don't need to know that information. So that fear can kind of overtake us. So it's important to figure out how to control that. How are you dealing with the fear?
With that fear, I am really, like I said a little bit earlier, I am really watching my intake. I mean, I do need to be informed because we need to be informed citizens, but I'm not saying I watch the talking heads on TV all the time, or I'm watching every news feed on Twitter or every news feed on Facebook. I try to find out the information I need to know. And again, talk to people about it. Ask them, how are you dealing with this? What have you thought about today, or what did you learn about today? And talk about those things that are going on with one another. But I think the most important thing is just to watch your intake and be mindful of it, and not get obsessed with it,
You and I have something in common, that we have somebody very near and dear to us who lives alone. That you and I are blessed that you live in a larger community. I live with my family. I know a lot of us are worried about the people who are living alone. What can we do to help them in this time?
I think it's important to reach out to people. It's important to reach out to them and to check on them. So I do call my mom every day and talk to her and have conversations. And it's interesting to talk to someone every day and, hey, what's going on today, when there's not a lot going on. I believe one day our big conversation was about night crawlers, because it happened to rain a lot that day. And so we talked about it'd be a great day to pick up night crawlers and keep them to go fishing when we're going to go fishing the next time. So it's just make those connections, because we are still human. Even though we physically might not be able to be with them or go out to eat with them, we can still call, text, video, anything like that. We need to reach out to them and then encourage them to speak about what they're going through and not just fall into the, hi, how are you doing? Oh, I'm okay. You okay today? Yeah, I'm okay today. No, really, kind of what you did to me at the beginning of our talk. No, really, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And give them the space, the freedom, and the safety to articulate in their way how they're doing and what they're going through.
Really, that's good advice that can apply to anybody, not
Right,
necessarily those are just who are living alone.
right.
Um, we talked a tiny bit about the fact that our inner well-being and our spiritual well-being is connected to that physical well-being. And I
Mm-hmm.
think right now, to help in addition to taking vitamin D, we want to take care of ourselves so that we can be healthy if God forbid anything happens. In your experiences, how have you seen that in your spiritual and mental health tied to that physical
Well,
health?
at the beginning of this, I think I kind of mentioned, at the beginning, I was like, okay, we got to get through this virus thing, and yeah, I'm going to do what I need to do, and at the very beginning, it was kind of like a little mini vacation. I didn't have so many meetings. I didn't have to go here. I didn't have to go there, and so I kind of let myself. I'm like, yeah, I'll just kick back, do what I have to do. I still have to go to prayers as a sister. I still have to do this, but I kind of let things slide for a little bit. But that only went for so long, and then I realized I can't do that. I can't let things slip and slide because we don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know what's going on. And so I got myself into a routine. I'm like, I still need to do this. I still need to get up and take a shower, brush my teeth, and do this and set goals and get yourself into a routine, so that we keep mental health, physical health, and keep those things connected, and not just worry about only hand washing. Did I get outside and get some sunshine today? Did I go for a walk? Did I go somewhere that I could? Did I take time for quiet? Did I take time for reflection? Doing all those things.
For me, it's been, I get up, I'm not a morning person, you know that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to get up and go for a walk in the morning, it just helps me get out of bed and start my day on a positive note,
Right.
because days start to look the same,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard, even with work for me,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to blur together. So
Right.
my last question for you, and I see that we have some questions, and I encourage folks to use the question and answer box to ask us some questions. Um, you and I haven't seen each other in person. We've been lucky enough to talk this way, and we text and talk in other ways too. Um, but when I see you, I'm going to want to give you a hug, and I'm going to want to give other people that I haven't seen in a long time a hug. How are we going to greet each other without hugging?
Won't that be interesting? We'll have to follow what the CDC says, obviously, but, virtual hugs, I don't even know, are we going to be able to fist bump? What are we going to do? But we'll have to have some way to let people know that we love them, that we care of them, and we want that closeness of love and friendship. So you and I will have to figure out our special way that we'll do that for one another.
Or something.
Exactly.
So we have a question here that's specific to the life in our communities right now. And I'll do the best that I can. I'm not an expert on this, but so I'll try to answer these. And Lisa, if you might want to talk about what it looks like in you living in community too. But first of all, what does the new normal day look like for activities and dining look like for the residents? And I know I can tell you, if anybody doesn't follow our communities on Facebook, I would encourage you to do so. There's some beautiful examples out there of the different things that are happening to engage our residents. I've spoken to some of our residents by phone, and they tell me that they're so happy to be there and they're glad. In this case, there was a gentleman that moved into one of our independent living communities prior to this, and it was in December that he moved in, and he told me that he was so glad that he had moved in prior to this, because now he doesn't have to leave. Everything he needs is there at his fingertips, and he feels safe and secure. So residents are getting their meals delivered to them if that's part of what they subscribe to. Independent living, obviously, they can get meals on their own, and activities have been so versatile. Some we have, as I said earlier, over 30 communities, and They are using the television, the interactive television to do, I know that they sometimes have church services through there. They've played bingo that way, and people are roaming up and down the halls to listen for the cries of bingo and distribute prizes. They are doing hallway activities. We can't have large gatherings, but we're very making sure that we're staying in regulation with the CDC guidelines and those types of things. So everybody is doing really well. And the other question here is asking if they'll be allowed to visit their window again. I'm sorry, I don't know what community you're with, but that is still happening in many of our communities where the residents are able to see their loved ones out the window. And then they're also asking if there's a concern if we have enough PPE for employees for however long that lasts. So far, so good. We, in the beginning, as you know, there was a shortage of PPE, but through people like you and those in our greater communities, we have received donations. We've, obviously sources have opened up as well, and we are getting those, purchasing them. It's always been about availability, not cost for us. So that's the only question we received. Please send in your questions. We still have about 5 more minutes. But in the meantime, Sister, I know that you prepared some advice for us. I mean, we've talked a lot about it. So we're going to pull that up now and talk about some of these things that we've talked about. And for those of you who are interested in receiving this, we will have this posted on the benedictineliving.org website. And I will talk about that at the end a little bit, but go ahead, Lisa.
Well, I think I mentioned some of these, as I said, when we were talking, you know, that idea of have a routine. Don't let yourself slide into, I mean, give yourself a break some days if you need it. Have a stay in pajama day if that's what you want to do, but have a routine and set goals, you know, and find those things that interest you. That idea of reaching out to others, I think, is an important thing. I know I have my phone list of my friends and family who I talk to quite frequently, but I've literally gone through it and I've just called people systematically. You know, call 1 or 2 different people a day. I've actually that idea of writing letters, I do that all the time to my little niece. I write her a letter each week and I color a picture. Well, I've started doing that to other people too. I'm sure everybody'd love a picture colored by me sent to them with a card, you know, so just doing things like that to keep us going. I also notice that keep a journal. That's a great way to talk about your feelings. If you don't want to share them out loud to someone, at least write them down to get them out. You know, one of the things with this idea of grief, I think we can think about it in a journal, like, when have I been through hard times before? How did I get through hard times before? That'd be a great thing to talk about in your journal and to think about what you've gone through in your life, and maybe that can help you to get through these days too. Some other things that I thought about.
And we do have a few more questions here, Sister.
Oh, sorry, I'll let you go to the question.
Oh, well, I didn't mean to cut you off. Somebody is asking, when and how do you see opening the communities to families? And that is outside of our control. We are abiding all CDC and CMS guidelines, and there will be a rigorous process. There's been some information that was released yesterday, I believe, that is getting us started to think about that process. But just as we've had strict protocols in place now to make sure that everybody is healthy and happy, we will make sure that before we open up that it's safe for our residents. That is our biggest concern. Another question, Sister, for you. It says you've talked about setting aside time for quiet and reflection. Do you have any good questions or topics for those quiet times?
Well, thank you for asking. That's kind of what I was getting to. That idea of to reflect upon your life, like, when have I gone through times? Now, probably never a time like this, but what other times in my life have been troublesome, or that I've gone through difficulties, and reflect upon how have I dealt with those. You know, even in the now, your reflection maybe at the end of the day can be, where did I find meaning in my day today? You know, how did I practice compassion today? You can ask yourself, where did I find kindness? Or you might think about, what goodness has God offered me in this? Or where are my sorrows? Or where are my hopes? Where are my fears? Where are my dreams? Those are all great questions that you can ask yourself.
For me personally, I've been really focusing on just being grateful for everything that I am blessed with. You know, I
Mm,
still have a wonderful job where I'm fulfilled, and my family, everybody is healthy and happy, and my friends. And so I just really try to focus on that and not the unknown.
right. Gratitude is a great way to go.
Um, somebody says that incorporating music and laughter into your
Ah,
day is a great way of doing it. And boy, I couldn't agree more with that.
that is a good, I like that. Laughter and music. You got to do something to lift our spirits, right?
Yes, Sister Lisa and I have some music in common too.
We do. The 80s were good years.
Another person is asking, says, my loved one is new to the community. They've been there 2 months. What can they do to help her get involved and acquainted during this pandemic? Yeah, you know, I know that they have been doing things as introducing them to their neighbors, you know, not face to face, obviously, but from a distance, and making sure that people aren't just um, staying shut in their rooms. You know, if there are activities, getting them out and getting them involved in that. So I know there's a lot of individual interaction going on, and of course they're doing that with between the staff and the residents, and of course they're doing that with masks and all the PPE that they need. So I think that is, we're closing out on our time. I believe we've answered all the questions that we, and let me just take a look back and make sure. Um, so uh, this advice that is on the screen, again, we forgot to put the website on here, but it's, you can go ahead and move it to that one. It's benedictineliving.org, and it will be on our resources page. So feel free to go there and you can download a PDF there. Also, if you have any questions, if we didn't answer your questions, I see a couple more have popped in since then. You feel free to email them to us at livingwell@benedictineliving.org. Um, and if you have maybe a question, a follow-up question for Sister Lisa, or if you want to learn more about Benedictine, feel free to use that email address and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So I want to thank everybody for joining us on our inaugural event here. I know it's a beautiful day in the upper Midwest and it would be so easy to be outside. I would love to be as well, but so we thank you for taking time. And Sister, thank you so much for doing this with me and doing this for us today and sharing your wisdom with everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I had a beautiful time, and know that I hold you and all at Benedictine in my loving prayers each and every day.
Thank you, Sister. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you.